The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. What's happening? Benton here. Benton here. Before I get into today's message, and I do have notes, shout out to, I wrote this down, shout out to the perpetual unfolding of imminent ideas. Yes. Shout out to reading all them books as a young person into my 20s. Because when I wrote that down, when that idea came to me, the perpetual unfolding of imminent ideas, IMMANENT, I couldn't quite grasp the meaning, but I knew it was correct. So let's define the term, if we may. Imminent, not EM. Oh, that's right. What's up, mental pancakes? Now we're back to the confusions inherent, perhaps by design, contained within the English language. But IMMANENT, naturally part of something, existing throughout and within something, intrinsic. Say, what do you mean, sir? The perpetual unfolding of imminent ideas. Well, let's start with the title of the stream, Discovering the Superintelligence Within. This is some of the ideas I've been working with lately. If God is love, and love is definable as the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest vibrational levels, and further, if the kingdom of God, meaning the kingdom of the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, is within you, as scripture claims, not that one is beholden to or has agreed to live based on dead scripture, by the way, but perhaps many have at various times. Perhaps many were raised in such a culture, and thus may be more easily persuaded to accept my reasoning here. I mean, Leo Tolstoy wrote an entire book called The Kingdom of God is Within You. I believe that was the title. So let's go back. If God is love, and love is definable as the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, and the kingdom of God is within you, the kingdom of the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, and further, if your soul or essence that existed, in my view, again, this is my knowing, however, that is not evidence that I'm able to present to any of you, so there must be room for doubt. And me speaking on this topic would represent my speculation or opinion, because what I'm able to demonstrate and bring forth into the realm is not the same thing as what I'm able to experience directly within my own being. Two very different things. Now we're back to yesterday's topic of internalization versus externalization, but I digress. So if my essence, your essence, is one with God in the context in which I'm speaking, what's up, El Pero? Good to see you. Within the context I'm speaking, then within you exists the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level. Now, some may say no, duh, and I say, well, if it seems obvious, that's because what is now happening in this discourse is an examination of various concepts, but at the most basic fundamental levels, and putting them together to draw conclusions. And perhaps inch ever closer to manifesting truth, because truth is manifest. Truth can't be captured, because if it can be captured, it's not truth. Truth can't be held or grasped, because as soon as it's held or grasped, it begins to die. And truth can never be a dead thing. And further, well, that's jumping ahead. We won't even get into that. So that's what I mean by discovering the superintelligence within. And my practices have recently led me to directing my focus inwardly and identifying with the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, or shorthand, the super intelligence within. Because to identify at the level of my being with anything of this world, including the psychology of Benton, the persona, one of the personas speaking to you now, they're all under the Benton umbrella, and we're not going DID, I can assure you. I did not invent the concept of multiple personas or masks, right? Please don't kill the messenger. And what a blessing, by the way, to be able to address you fine folks this morning. And part of not complaining too much about the challenges of truck driving yesterday with the long waits and the delays would be to realize, well, it's a blessing. Here come the blessing, because it's all blessings. Now I've woken up more or less. I've awakened after sleep more or less at the normal time, but we still have almost 2 hours before the day can start. Actually, over 2 hours if you count the time spent logging the inspection of the rig. I walked into the truck stop yesterday because I wanted a receipt for my reserved parking to tape into the window, mostly so that I'm able to sleep and reduce the chances of being awakened. If the parking fills up, they might not realize I paid. I don't want to pay $20 and get awakened in the night, if possible. Sometimes it's unavoidable. And a fella looked a bit lost here on the gigantic spread out Travel Centers of America truck parking lot. And at first he was creeping along, and I was about to do a U-turn and park in my reserved parking. So I stopped to sort of see what he was going to do, because he was there first. Now I'm cutting him off. And then I left enough room, and I observed him. So, well, okay, I can back in here and not be in his way. And the next thing I know, he's doing a maneuver. He does a U-turn and pulls in forward. And then by the time I get in the truck stop, a few minutes later, it's the same fella. And he's trying to pay for parking, but he has no cash, apparently. Meanwhile, I'm focused on my business. And then I asked, and I'll get back to what I asked the lady, but I had a specific question for the ladies working there. And there was a mystery, in fact, that one of the ladies solved for me, and I was appreciative. And I even mentioned something to the fella who was complaining about not being able to. Well, he's basically like, how do I pay for the parking? Because he thought he could pay on his fuel card, but it don't work that way. I don't know if he's new to trucking, or maybe he's got a beef with the company. I don't know. Maybe he's got $20 and he needs it for something else. Maybe spite. Maybe he just says, "Well, I'm not paying for this parking. It's their fault." Right? It's their fault. I need this parking at this time. Maybe he drives early in the morning. Also, I don't know. Um, so then eventually it occurs to me that, well, wait a minute. This guy needs to park. Doesn't have the money. I've been looking for somebody to give $20 to as like part of my pay it forward service. So then it dawns on me, and he's left the store by now. And I was pretty sure that was the same guy in that truck. So I chased him down. Actually, we were parked nearby. I got his attention, and I said, "Oh man, so you just need $20 to park, right?" I said, "I'll give you $20." And you should have seen the look on his face. It's like he wasn't even processing what was happening. And then when people kind of look shocked or whatever, I'll just be like, well, people, or if they're homeless and they're like, why is another homeless person giving me money? And, I might do a version of, well, or if I'm homeless, but I'm not appearing homeless, it's like, well, people help me out. People have helped me out. I've been helped, I say, actually, not people. I've been helped along the way. I've been helped out along the way. I know what it's like. See, I didn't give him $20, meaning Benton, meaning the persona, meaning the psychology that would identify with this realm, because all of that's death, all of that's destruction, right? So what gave him $20 to park his big rig and rest easy, get his proper rest for his driving shift, was the super intelligence within. That's what did that. And in my mind, what's $20? $20 is what $5 used to be. Now I may not give it if I'm asked for it, but I'll pretty much give anybody $5. Like, yeah, here, just take it. This is like what a dollar used to be. Who cares? Yeah, you'll still pick it up off the ground if you see it, but you know, not that big of a deal. Well, it's like a 20 is becoming what that is, right? So back to identification, each of us as beings, operating within this realm, it seems to me, again, I must leave room for the solipsism, but extrapolating from my experience, if your experience is akin to mine, and I suspect that it is, not across the board, but more alike than dissimilar, then your psychology, and in fact, I would posit that the psychology is designed to interact and interface and act upon the nature within the being, right? Cunningly designed and crafted and installed, uh, beginning immediately upon your insertion into what some call a matrix, which is another word for womb, by the way. How about that? And the creative force, I'm realizing in this moment, the perpetual unfolding of imminent ideas. I'm realizing in this moment that the process occurs via the individual's creative force, which never lies dormant. Thus, the individual, moment to moment, is always engaged in a process of identifying with something. And then also repression would be utilizing the creative force uh, to create a false reality, right, where something is occurring but refusing to identify with it. And some of this I'm sort of, it's coming to me in the moment, so I'll have to think about some of this more. Some of this may not be strictly correct. So what I'm realizing, and by realizing, I mean able to act upon and bring forth, which ultimately, what exists beyond that? If this force we're talking about, this super intelligence, if that's my essence within me, what else is there in this realm other than what, and again, solipsistically speaking, for my sphere of influence, my only power, as far as I can tell, at least in the present limited form, then everything that's not what I am bringing forth and manifesting, there's a loaded term, into the realm, right now is properly defined as aligned with or identified with this physical realm of death, destruction, depravity, decadence, deprivation, suffering, torture, strife, struggle, anxiety, depression. Oh, I missed the D in the sequence. And on and on and on and on. And as a dynamic being, purportedly born of a rebel, Adam, purportedly born of a rebel, each new moment, and this is the spiritual war, by the way, each new moment is a choice between affirming and bringing forth the superintelligence within or the antithesis of the most superintelligent force of love possible at the highest level, which would be the lowest levels of evil, death, destruction, depravity, and on and on and on. That is the spiritual war. That's what is meant by there's no middle ground. It's not possible to ride the fence. The lukewarm, and then scripture saying better to be hot or cold. The lukewarm is spat out of the mouth. Well, in the context of the spiritual war, there is no lukewarm. Each new moment, the creative force affirms the true essence within being aligned, right, with super intelligent love, or affirms the antithesis of that. No other possibilities, no other, nothing else is possible. Other than what? The subversion of the creative force, which never lies dormant, which in my view is that is the plight of humanity. To sum up in one sentence, what is the plight of humanity? It's the subversion of virtually each individual who comprises the mass seeing their creative force, which never lies dormant and always brings something new into existence each moment. To see that subverted into doing what? Into serving the antithesis of their own nature, to serve the antithesis of the being's own nature by default, meaning the old Benton, several of the early versions of Benton, well into my mid 30s, most of humanity based on my observations, the default state, meaning what they are bringing forth via their creative force in each new moment, defaults to serving not the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, the antithesis of that. And yesterday we got into the reasons why I believe that if it's true that there's a most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, there must necessarily be the antithesis of that idea. So let's go ahead and define antithesis. And then we're going to get into thesis, which also plays in. Let's go antithesis. Hang on. And this is effectively a university level course at this. I hope y'all realize this, that this is a university level lecture from limited, and I'll brag a little bit, from limited notes and more or less off the dome. I want you folks to grasp what you're listening to here, please. And I know I have a certain tone and all of this. Is that really what's relevant? I'm going to tell you this. If the being believes the being has a goal of progression in this life towards spiritual ideas and attainment, the being will not get there. And I already forgot what I was criticizing. What was I just criticizing? I think you get the point. Oh, by focusing on my tone or how I express. See? Put your big girl pants on and deal with it, or don't. There's only 6 in the house. I must be onto something. Antithesis, a proposition that is the diametric opposite of some other proposition. This is starting to sound familiar. Devil's Advocate, perhaps? Oh, that's a movie. So, well, Benson, is he really lecturing at a university level uh, when some of these concepts he's mentioning, Al Pacino comically starred in a movie about it? Thesis, Thesis. Thesis is a proposition or statement supported by arguments. So the thesis in this case would be the most super intelligent force of love at the highest level possible, merely existing. Merely existing. Right? Because for the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level to exist, that's fairly audacious. That's a force that's declaring itself a proposition and saying, it's proposing, well, I am this. I am. Right? I am the most super intelligent force of love possible. Antithesis or antithesis says, oh, really? I'm going to need you to show your work here because I'm the opposite of that. I'm antithesis. So if you take the form of the most super intelligent love possible at the highest level, well, I guess I'm death, destruction, and evil at the lowest level possible because I'm playing the devil's advocate. Not me, Benton, but I think you know my meaning. The pronouns become tricky. So let's go back to antithesis. Antithesis. A proposition that is the diametric opposite of some other proposition. So here love come to town and proclaims, I'm the highest form of super intelligent love possible. Here I am. Dig me. And antithesis says challenge accepted. I see your proposition and I raise you its diametric opposite. Well, now who judges? How does thesis and antithesis, the one proposition and the antithetical proposition, how is this going to be proven out at the level of law and proof and legalese and argument? Oh, well, there's this being over here, Adam, and there's Eve, the Adamic race. And again, one is free to say that's a bunch of nonsense. That's fine. I'm making a point. Okay. Well, challenge accepted on both sides. So how about the spiritual war in this context, what I refer to as a spiritual war? Let's test the spirits. We got the one spirit saying, well, I am that one, the Alpha and the Omega, the creative force above all other creative forces. And then the devil's advocate, Al Pacino, says, well, I will happily argue. In fact, I will prosecute you, super intelligent love. But how are we going to, we need, what do they call it in court? There's a term for the proper procedures, right? Well, I got this human over here. I got these humans. What's up, Rob Cleveland? There's these humans over here. And how about that's the courtroom? How about that's the substrate? Okay, well, love come to town, the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level. Enter into Adam, enter into Eve. Okay, well, antithesis says, well, I'm going to take the form of this serpent over here. And now there's this tree of the knowledge of life and death or whatever. And then, let's symbolically see what exists. So the serpent, as any prosecutor or lawyer would need to do, must be expert at understanding what he's proposing, and then also expert at finding any weak points in the opposition's proposition. So, okay, what weak point exists that could possibly be acted upon? Oh, I suspect, as the serpent, there's a potential within Eve to be corrupted, and chaos, by the way. Chaos is female, right? So I suspect, based on how this realm is unfolding energetically, we have chaos and order, right? Adam existing, perhaps not initially, but Adam soon to exist. So what would happen if we took Adam and Eve out of this place? They would then exist in a realm of duality, right? Again, I'm speculating based on the point of view of the serpent, or the prosecutor, the devil's advocate, the devil himself. If that's a thing. And so the intelligence is there in this proposition to say, well, I suspect there's a potential for corruption within Eve via what? Chaos, her nature, to some extent, as a female, as a personification of the yin and the yang. And then, but that's not going to be enough. What happens if Eve falls victim to temptation, and then she still has to get Adam to eat? So the serpent says, well, Adam's weakness is order, the yang, because he's going to want to keep things orderly and copacetic. So when his woman comes to him and offers him the fruit, his nature is going to be to accept the fruit, in spite of being commanded and instructed not to touch the fruit. And if Adam says, well, woman, what are you doing? We were given orders. Again, if Adam is, and I guess actually he had to rebel. See, I'm kind of fucking this up. Adam actually rebelled against his own nature in this instance. Eve was played based on her nature. Adam actually is the rebel. He rebelled against his nature. I would say Eve being more aligned with the nature of chaos. Her rebelling is neither here nor there. What's up, Adarius? I've been to Hammond many times, truck driving. Hammond, Indiana. So apologies, folks. This is some of this I'm figuring out in the moment. So the Adam and Eve metaphor is not completely holding up, but we'll get there. I see some folks said, well, wait a minute, this ain't making sense, and left, but that's okay. We'll get there. And I'll hone this over time, certainly. So thank you for being here in the early stages as I get over my skis a bit, as I like to call it. Getting a little over my skis here, but that's okay. So either way, once this corruption enters into the human race, the so-called Adamic race, and now humanity is cast out of the garden, now we have our courtroom, right? And apologies for the clumsy and clunky metaphors there and allegories. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for your forgiveness and tolerance to my limited, the limits of my intellect. So thank you. I don't know it all, certainly. My essence is all knowing. How about that? My essence is all knowing. So I clearly identified with the wrong forces in order to say all of that. This is the part of the fun of the live stream, though. We don't have an eraser. There's no blackboard with an eraser. So now we have our substrate. Now we have our battlefield to test the spirits. All right. So now we've got the battle royale between the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level and its antithesis, the death and destruction and suffering and misery, and on and on and on. The zenith of all of that, the epitome of all of that, which is what? That's this realm. Or more correctly, that's what this realm is unfolding to represent in these moments, right? Because probably evil got a head start, I'm guessing, because love has got nothing to worry about. The most super intelligent force of love possible can't worry. See, worry belonged to the antithesis, Worry belonged to the antithesis. The most superintelligent force of love possible at the highest level cannot worry. It cannot concern itself with the outcome of this wager, dare I say. It's not able to do that. Why is it not able to do that? Because that's antithetical to its nature. If it were able to worry about this wager and its outcome, it would not be the most superintelligent force of love possible. It would be the antithesis of that. It would, in fact, be the enemy. Right? So if my nature, if my essence is one with the most superintelligent force of love possible at the highest level, then my essence is incapable of worrying about outcomes. Worry about outcomes is identified with the enemy. Right. Fascinating. Fascinating. And back to what I asserted earlier. Each new moment, the creative force is bringing something new into the realm, birthing anew, and whatever is birthed 100% of the time serves via manifesting consistent with the nature of the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, or serves the antithesis or the enemy or evil or Satan or death or destruction. So when I fall away, if I'm manifesting that force for part of this lecture and discourse, and then I fall away from that and temporarily fuck up the Adam and Eve um, allegory, then what happened? I temporarily became aligned with, I temporarily fell away from identification with my true nature and began to manifest death and destruction, also known as the enemy. Now we're to the idea of, the idea of good or God or creation on one shoulder, or an angel, good slash angel slash creation on one shoulder, seeking to influence, perhaps, although which one is seeking to influence? And then on the other shoulder, devils, destruction, death. Right? Antithesis. And the goal, the proposition of the lowest levels of evil, death, destruction, depravity, all of this, is to disprove the proposition of the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, which doesn't know how to do anything other than to just bodaciously say, here I am, love come to town, and dig me. Because it can't worry about, well, how are these humans going to react when love come to town? See, it's not capable of worrying about that. It's not capable of becoming anxious and saying, well, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I go into a new situation and, they reject me, right? Well, the most super intelligent force of love possible is incapable of experiencing rejection. Again, that belongs to death and destruction. Rejection goes right into that line of things that could be used to describe the lowest levels of vibrational energy. Rejection is one of the lowest possible. See? And then look at how the human psychology operates within the realm, moment to moment. And I'm 100% convinced that psychology was directly crafted and designed and installed on behalf of death, destruction, lowest levels of evil and vibrational energy possible. That's who is responsible for our psychologies, at least initially. And that happens via the processes of socialization within within a specific cultural context, right? And more specifically, to do what? Well, to serve God, right? To serve God, which can mean multiple things, or it can mean different things. So God, in the context of the way the psychology, if God is the master, then what is the God? The God is money. The God is business. The God is consumption. Buy my product, and now I grant you the authority to identify within yourself as if you are all knowing, as if you are all powerful, while simultaneously playing upon these psychological hooks. And I, the enemy, installed your psychology and designed it, and it's designed to play upon your human capacity or potential to experience negative states of fear, anxiety, worry, guilt, etc. See, it's a negative motivation. It's an antithesis, yet again. It's a counterpunch. It's a judo move. Right? Oh, I see which way you're moving. Let me take the way you're moving and use that against you. And now I flipped you on your head with seemingly no effort with my pinky finger. See, that this is the enemy. So the enemy's in a big fat hurry because the enemy knows if we're testing the spirits, the enemy knows the nature of the human. The enemy being the epitome of all of uh, these negative states of being, is so arrogant, egotistical, so-called narcissistic, as to say, well, I'm greater than that force. Right? That's what the enemy says. The antithesis says, I am the enemy, I'm the opposite, I'm the antithesis of love comes to town, and I will prove it at the level of legalese, right? In order to appeal to whatever is out there to be appealed to stake legal claims and say, well, look at the state of humanity. I don't see a single one of them doing anything other than using their creative force that never lies dormant to serve me. See, and this is part of the reason, even if love could worry, perhaps it would not have valid reason to worry, because the enemy has to capture all of us simultaneously to claim victory. Because certainly the enemy is intelligent and cunning. Cunning's probably a better word. The enemy is cunning enough to understand strategically, I can't go to the authority with legalese until my arguments are as strong as possible. Meaning, I can't even leave one of these humans to align themselves with what? Not a sky daddy, not something outside of ourselves. The most super intelligent force of love possible only needs one individual in the realm at a given time to actively be identifying with their true nature within. And it's impossible for darkness to claim victory. It's impossible for death to claim victory. It's impossible for evil to claim victory under those circumstances. So I am that one. Now we're back to the solipsism. And that's all I can do. If I know 100% with 100% certainty within myself, while not even attempting to convince anybody else, I'm convinced, and that's good enough for me. And I also see that, well, there's the antithesis of my nature, right? And one of them's going to carry the day in this realm. And my nature says, well, of course, love wins. How can darkness defeat the light? How can darkness drive out the light? It's the opposite. It's the light drives out the darkness. What Satan is attempting to do, if you want to call it that, the enemy, is to say, well, actually, my darkness has, I've utilized my darkness and I've convinced these fools, all of them simultaneously, to refuse to embody their own natures via their creative force. And make no mistake, that would represent a total victory in this war. And I'm here to tell you it's not possible. That would be the same as the darkness driving out the light. Well, the darkness is not able to do that. The darkness is able to convince humanity to do that by, maybe throwing thick blankets over the light, by covering the light, by refusing to let their light shine. Right? Rebelliously. That's what's meant by humans being a race of rebels. It's to be in rebellion with their own nature, not with a sky daddy, not with an all-powerful, dictator who says you must this, that, and the third. Because love can't do that. Love can't say you must this, that, and the third. Right? Love's not capable of that. Love is love no matter what happens. It's not conditional, meaning there's no such thing as unconditional love. That doesn't exist. Because whatever's being described previously as love, such that, well, now we need to introduce a term called unconditional love. No, whatever you referred to before that is not love. And if it's not love, what is it? It's death. It's destruction. It's evil. It's fear. It's guilt. It's anxiety. This is so simple. And that's why most are unable to grasp it, because of its simplicity, because of the refusal to discipline one's mind, the continuous disciplining of one's own mind. To do what? Examine basic concepts, as I've done long enough, stubbornly enough, trusting. By the way, is that not the nature of the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level? To trust. Was I not acting upon my own nature when I've spent year after year, day after day, week after week, month after month, trusting that via these processes I will either get to the promised land within myself metaphorically, or this life will end, and it was worth trying? Because as I tried, as I toiled in those endeavors and practices and underwent hardship, it was worth it, because that created the potential for self-realization, so-called. Probably ought to define that. It's a bit of a hippy-dippy Eastern philosophy, right? Type of thing. Self, is that in the dictionary? Self-realization. It's not, unless it's hyphenated. Self-realization is the fulfillment of one's own abilities or capacities. Self-actualization. It's also the direct experience of being in relation to one's inner nature as an unbounded creator of one's reality. It's also a realization about oneself. So I have achieved self-realization, meaning nobody told me this, although they did. See, I was told all of this. However, guess what? It's not possible to achieve self-realization within oneself via the intellect alone. It only ever can happen when the mind, the body, and the spirit are in alignment with one another. See? And this is back to he who knows tells it not, he who tells knows it not. Yeah, I want to run around and tell everybody. In fact, I'm telling it to some extent here. But in the context of what? A university style lecture, except part of it fell below that standard when I tried to go into this Adam and Eve uh, framework, and I fell flat on my face. But by the way, my nature can't fear falling flat on its face, right? But then again, my nature can't fall flat on its face now, can it? See how it works? So what man has done, people like Paramahansa Yogananda, if he existed, what he's done is make a business of self-realization. I believe his organization was the Self-Realization Foundation or something along those lines. And now we're going to have an ashram, and and obviously, in my view, encouraging people to meditate. That can be a good thing, certainly. But now, as I've said before, everything in this realm is a business, right? Except maybe whatever's going on inside of me, solipsistically. So everything outside of me is a business. Now, thankfully, I was granted a great shortcut in these undertakings. Being raised by Jehovah's Witness parents, this has precluded me from ever attempting to create my own structure, framework, or religion or cult that I would then seek to attract followers to, adherents, as initiates into my system, right? And then to run them through their paces in order to do what? Gain influence over them, and to do what? Capture control of their resources, right? Well, that can't ever be the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level. Thus, these gurus and masters and teachers, other than perhaps my personal favorite, Krishnamurti. So if these gurus were what they purported to be, they would have to do what Krishnamurti supposedly did, which was he was discovered as a child and trained to be the like world teacher of theosophy. And when he reached majority age, and they said, "Okay, now you're in charge," he said, "Well, if I'm in charge, we're disbanding this organization. If you put me in charge of it, I'm disbanding it. I'm shutting the doors. We're business closed. Grand opening, grand closing. Because why? Because humankind is incapable of creating and operating systems that are free from corruption. Krishnamurti, certainly, if he was what he, not that he purported to be, but if he was what I believe he may have been, right? A being who more often than not was identified with the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level within himself. Well, that force would have to say, well, actually, because of the state of humanity, collectively, humankind cannot create this organization called theosophy and operate it in such a way that it will not become demonically oppressed. Therefore, due to the futility and folly built into the endeavor, we ain't doing that. Now, maybe y'all are doing that. We aren't doing that, meaning me as the world teacher. And the realm of death and destruction and all of these, the lowest, negative emotions and levels of vibration possible, would have attempted to play upon Krishnamurti's psychology installed by the system or the system to strengthen the system. And it would seek to appeal to his desires as of the flesh, right? Born into the process, his whatever he desired, and say, well, it will be much easier for you, Krishnamurti, to obtain the objects of your desire if you just do what I ask of you, meaning the lowest levels of depravity, death, destruction, and all of this possible. serve me, and then you can almost be guaranteed of being able to enjoy yourself, as a man of respect and high position and access to resources, and access to the pleasures of the flesh. And what we see is that this is the corruption, by the way, is that few are able to turn their back on such potentials, right? Few. And why is that? Because most of the time, the individual is the antithesis of their own nature. Meaning, instead of identifying with self, instead of examining and exploring the internal space, the sphere of influence, the power within, the power of love, by the way, Huey Lewis, is to refuse to do that, or to fail to do that, or to unknowingly not be able to comprehend and grasp that, to not positively affirm their own nature in each given moment. The default state of the human is to default to the service of death and destruction. See? So that's where the submission comes in. It's not a submission to an outside authority. It's not a submission to a church. It's not a submission to a religion or a government or another person or man or woman. It's a submission within oneself, and an acceptance within oneself of the being's true nature. And that acceptance can never be achieved via the yang of the yin and the yang, the assertive, the dominant, the masculine. Meanwhile, the enemy says, well, surprise, surprise, I just happen to have designed your psychology in such a way that anything that you believe is worth achieving can only be achieved through the assertive, dominant, and masculine means. So good luck to you, buddy. What we're going to see is that when the time comes to submit, when the time comes to passively accept, by process of a getting out of one's own way, right, and accepting and allowing the true nature to express passively, by the way. How does love come to town? Does love come to town through assertion and domination and one side of the yin and the yang? Does love come to town via domination, assertion, masculine energy? Or does it come to town and say, I'm all that in a bag of chips, partner? How about this yin? How about this yin, playboy? Because the yin and the yang is situational, and it's in a context. And if we're only ever expressing the yang, I'm here to tell you, and by we, I mean the royal we, if the being is only ever expressing the yang, the enemy wins. It's not possible. It's not possible to express the nature of the being by only accessing the yang or the masculine or the dominant or the controlling nature. One must be adept at working with both sides, which includes what, fellas? The feminine, the passive, the submissive. That's right. This realm will tell you no spiritual surrender. I'm here to tell you no spiritual victory without surrender. Spiritual victory cannot occur without spiritual surrender, sir. But where is the surrender, and what is the surrender? It's a surrender within myself to what? To me. I surrender to me. I surrender to I am. I surrender to identifying with my own true nature. I surrender spiritually. Except the psychology's been programmed to say, well, that's not an option. You can't ever surrender. What are people going to think of you? sissy out here surrendering and submitting? Are you out of your mind? Well, I would just say, well, clearly you've never read The Art of War then, because there's a whole section on strategic, strategically retreating, and then even if necessary, surrendering rather than seeing one's army destroyed. So a refusal to submit spiritually, what does that equate to? To see one's own forces and power decimated by their own doing. The being undoes itself. The being destroys its own forces. And the enemy, the powerless enemy, by the way, laughs and says, silly humans, look at you. Look at you, you fucking bozos. Destroying your own army, metaphorically. By doing what? By refusing to surrender to your own nature inside of yourself. If one is willing to accept what I'm speaking on here is correct. Again, I know this within myself experientially, right? Experientially, I know this to be true. It's not evidence I can present. It's only evidence for me. I can't present it to you as evidence. I'm not even going to ask you to take my word for it. I would say, guess what? How about you, if I could dare to give a little bit of advice or instruction, but still, how about, right? How about spend a little time exploring that internal space? Oh, we don't like it in there. Oh, we don't. It's scary in there. There's all sorts of unniceties, the opposite of niceties. Sugar and spice and everything nice, not inside of me. What? Huh? Oh, that's right. Now we're back to one of the greatest tricks and strategies of the enemy, creating your psychology to always seek to externalize. And then the only way to embody and thus prove the proposition, right? The wager, the spiritual war, is for you, right, to go within yourself and reckon with whatever's there, whatever it may be, unpleasant, painful, disorienting, uncertain, insecure. See, now people might think I'm describing them. I'm not describing a person. I'm describing phenomena that exist within virtually every human. Why do they exist? Because enough trials have occurred, and because the realm has given you a psychology, and there's been a socialization process within a cultural context. Against your will, you've been foisted into a realm of business, by the way. Is the most super intelligent force of love conducting business in this realm? Does that seem like something worth the most super intelligent force of love possible spending its time on? The most super intelligent force of love says possible says you need $20 to park your big rig. Here you go. Take it. Have it. It's death and destruction and the lowest levels of energy possible that say, well, actually, sir, if you come over here and I'll tell you what, I'll pull my truck over to the fuel island and just go ahead and clean this here glass and I'll give you $20. And then you can park your rig and then you can rest, sir. But I need my pound of flesh first. See, that's death. That's destruction. So when you say make America great again, you're saying make America death again. You're saying make America destruction again. You're saying make America evil again. Or make it more of those things because it's already those things. Because America won't give that fella $20. America's not letting him park his big rig when he needs rest at the end of the day. seeking rest in this realm and finding none temporarily. Now, where would he find rest? Let's just say worst came to worst and he's just stuck like Chuck and now he's got to go make his own parking space. But maybe he's undiagnosed fake autistic like me and he can't get a good night's rest if he's not parked in a legal spot. Well, what would be the solution? What, or more correctly, what would resolve that state of being? For the being to go within oneself and to have already reckoned with whatever is present and to identify with their own true nature, their own essence, which is the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level. I am that force. That's what I am. Who am I is a completely different question. What am I? Oh, you mean my purest essence that can't be killed and existed somewhere else and then incarnated into this realm? Oh, I am the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level. But my ego isn't that. My id is not that. My conscious mind is not that. My subconscious mind is not that. My physiology is not that. Right? So what is the meaning? And I'm going to go get some coffee after this, but I want to posit this to some of the audience is familiar with a content creator, one of the most successful, in fact, if not the most successful in the space. Uh, Paul Unslaved at Pimp Unslaved, I believe, is still the YouTube username for the channel. And this is not by way of promotion, but he likes to say at various times, he's taken up the habit of saying we are all one at the highest level. And what does that state? See, I always knew there was something wrong with him stating that, and that he didn't mean it literally, or he meant it literally and figuratively. So what is that? What does that statement represent? It represents a mockery of the nature of the individual. It's saying, well, in answer to seeing the foolishness, the behavior, the looping, right? Uh, Miscreants coming up on his panels, and eventually the conversation devolves to a certain point, and humanity has shown itself ugly, warts and all, and Paul Enslaved declares, well, we're all one at the highest level, which is to a mockery, which is saying, don't you get it? You were created with this nature in the image and likeness of the most super intelligent force of love possible. Look how you're behaving. Look what is coming. Look what you're allowing to be birthed moment by moment via the subversion of your creative force. Right. What are you doing? Right. So it's actually, in my view, that statement is meant to affirm not thesis, because it sounds like it's a thesis. It sounds like we are all one at the highest level. Sounds like, oh, well, that's the thesis of the most super intelligent force of love possible when love comes down. No, it's not. It's something that Thomas Merton wrote, which is the enemy or Satan is happy to preach the gospel of Jesus, provided Satan, is able to preach it in his own way. That's antithesis seeming to manifest or refer to thesis unironically while doing quite the opposite. And this is, by the way, be as wise as serpents, as harmless as doves. The wisdom of a serpent is required to decode that particular bit of cunning, guile, and subterfuge hidden in plain sight, 48 laws of power type of stuff, right? Machiavellianism. What's up, Razvan? If you're just getting here, other than when I try to talk about Adam and Eve, it's been a fairly instructive discourse, if I do say so myself. But I'm off to the restroom. I'm sorry, I'm off to coffee. and then perhaps the restroom. I shall return. I shall return directly. We're almost back. In just a moment. I'll be right with you. Yeah, Bubba. Talked him into free coffee by saying, free coffee? Free coffee? And I said, it's a refill. But then if he was like, no, I got to charge you, then I was going to buy somebody else's coffee. Thus, it still would have been free coffee. Ha, ha, ha. And I was just thinking about, you know, if I were to try to, and by the way, just coming onto this channel and talking about all of these concepts, what will happen is everything I'm speaking on, it's at some point will be extrapolated and assumed that I'm saying all of this about myself as far as, you know, when I identify with myself, within myself, you know, I'm incapable of experiencing fear, anxiety, guilt, trepidation, you know, all of this. And what will be removed is the context whereby I've already said that when I'm not actively identifying as such within myself, the default state of the human is to then serve the opposite, the antithesis of that. Truth is manifest, sir. Good to see you, JT. Truth is manifest in the moment. If it's not manifest in the moment, it's not true. It really is that simple. Again, Benton's fake undiagnosed autistic / super high functioning retarded continuous disciplining of the mind to always bring each assertion, not always, but because there's always exceptions to everything, but to as nearly perfect as possible to resolve or reconcile the statement with the basic fundamental nature of the thing itself, which is truth. Truth is manifest. In this moment. If you refer to anything that's not manifest in this moment, you cannot be referring to truth. Isn't that amazing? What a blessing. What a blessing. So, you know, I'm having these thought experiments around, you know, this ability to have these conversations with myself in my own head and, you know, realizing that at some point, if I continue on talking this way, kill the messenger will have to be employed, right? And context, removal of context is one of the the big ways to do that. And then we'll just say, well, if Benton was able to do all of these things he claims to do, why does he not perfectly embody and exhibit all of this? Why doesn't he? Why is there these moments where his behavior falls short of what he claims to be his essence? And I love this because as I walk back to the truck, as this thought experiment conducted itself, the answer immediately came to mind. So this is what I would say to them. Oh, you're talking of permanence now. Oh, wait a minute. I thought there was consensus that this realm is the antithesis of permanent, right? Doesn't everybody like to run around talking about how this is all temporary? Did y'all miss the "this is all temporary" train? So wait a minute. How is Benton now being forced into a space where simply by realizing, by achieving realization of self via his own practices and his own efforts, right? And his own super intelligence, by the way. And because the context of his statements have been removed and there's evidence of him, then that we will then refer to all of that as if that's a standard for behavior. And if it's not met 100%, now here come the attacks to kill the messenger. And my answer would be, oh, wait a minute. Now we're discussing permanence. And aren't y'all the same people running around talking about how this is all temporary when it suits your arguments, right? Well, this is all temporary. You know, the word of mouthing and the just repeating of slogans. That would be my answer. Well, what do you mean? Why am I being treated as if my existence in this realm is permanent? As if as a human being I somehow possess the ability to permanently, in every moment from here to the last beating of my heart and the last drawing of breath, as if I'm permanently able to inhabit a state of never not identifying with my true internal nature. What would I be if I was able to exhibit that? What would I be if I was able to examine that? In order to examine truth based upon perspective, JT, one would need to capture the manifested truth of this moment, grasp onto it, and look at it, at which point it can no longer represent truth because truth is living, meaning it's in flow. Best branding since the situation from Jersey Shore. And if you grasp it and bring it to yourself and hold it in your hand, it cannot be truth because it would begin a process of dying because you stopped its flow. See, thus an impossibility. Isn't that interesting? And how did I figure that out? I figured that out because I was subjected to a mind control cult called the Jehovah's Witnesses who never shut the fuck up about the truth, air quotes. And intuitively, I always knew there was something wrong with their assertions. And it took me many, many, many years, and it finally struck me that they are claiming to possess truth. However, if the nature of truth is living and manifest in the moment, then it cannot be grasped or held or captured, because when that happens, it then begins the process of decay and the process of dying. And truth cannot be decayed. Truth cannot be death, or dead, rather, more correctly. Truth cannot be dead because it's living and manifest. Again, the fundamental nature of the thing. And the reality is, our psychologies individually have been created and crafted and installed by the enemy for the enemy's purposes, to serve the systems of the enemy. And this is part of how it operates. Everything we're talking about here. You know, convince the individual to waste their time and energy and efforts into all sorts of foolishness that can't possibly bear fruit. At least not fruit that would serve the most, that would serve along with, by the way, that would serve along with the most super intelligent force of love possible in a co-creation space, in a space of co-creation. So permanence. So now we're taking Benton, a dynamic human, and we're now, the expectation is, well, he's going to become static and permanently inhabit this particular thing that he keeps preaching on, or we discredit him. That's the enemy, by the way, via the enemy's psychology. And I fully expect that to happen at some point, which is fine, because then I will say, oh, okay, well, let's just talk about permanence then. You're now introducing the topic of permanence in a realm in which there's near consensus that, well, actually, none of this is permanent. Is in fact, by definition, this place and this experience is impermanent. So permanence would be the state of being permanent. Permanent being without end or eternal. Well, wait a minute. Now this human experience is not It has an end. So we're expecting the human part of this human experience to do what? To live up to the antithesis of its own nature, which ties back in with what? The previous discourse before I took that small break. It's to examine the plight and, you know, what a human is born into at the level of this too shall pass away, right? The mortal nature, born into a mortal life, at least in this incarnation, impermanent, and then to take the antithesis of the nature of the experience and then hold the individual to that standard. That is a spiritual attack. When people come against me in that fashion, and believe you me, they will, that's them attacking the most super intelligent force of love possible by extension, by utilizing what? Its antithesis. So if I am a minion of the forces of destruction and death in this realm, and I identify Benton as a person who will audaciously, love comes to town through Benton, fleetingly, right? Fleetingly. And I'm not special in this regard. All of us probably exhibit this from time to time. But as I hit my goal of identification with and creation via the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, as I hit that, as I ring that steel more and more frequently in each moment, right? Because each moment is a shot in the context of shooting at a target. Each moment, something new is being brought into existence. So as my hit rate increases, so too will the persecution and the attacks. And if those attacks succeed in tricking me and fooling me, or somehow uh, causing me to identify not with my own thesis or nature or proposition of my own what I am, but instead to actually align myself with the antithesis of what I am, meaning to identify as a permanent being, or more correctly, a being who is capable of permanently inhabiting a static state when I'm a dynamic human and no such thing is possible. And if I were able to perfectly exhibit it, I would be something very specific that I'm not, by the way. And I'm not even going to say it. Not rules, sir. That's not a rule, JT. That's not a rule. JT coming with the spiritual attacks. I did not expect this morning. It's not a rule, JT. That's observing truth as it manifests and characterizing it and analyzing it and describing it, sir. The most super intelligent force of love possible cannot create rules. Now, as a human being having a human experience, do I create systems within myself for specific purposes? Absolutely. And do those systems operate based on what could be described as rules? Absolutely. Where we diverge is those rules, and this is what I talked about, the gift of being raised in the Jehovah's Witness cult. I lack the ability to create an artifice comprised of rules and then apply it to another human being. When I observe the behaviors via observation and report what I see, that's often going to take the form of a critique, which is not the same thing as me dictatorially imposing a rule set upon. And I'm here to tell you, if the being does not have the ability to track all of these details in real time and perfectly put each one of them in their respective places, the being is lost in delusion and deception and folly of all types. The development of one's own mind is necessary via the continuous disciplining of one's mind in order to avoid such pitfalls, sir. I just said that, sir. Oh, okay. And I didn't mean to go at you. I wasn't trying to have a go at you, JT. And I apologize if I said that you were spiritually attacking me. I'm a little sensitive. I hope you forgive me. Well, who is they, though? Are you talking about the lowest levels of depravity, death, destruction, and evil possible? Because, yeah, that force is nothing but rules. See, love don't know what a rule is. So you're agreeing with me. Thank you. See how frequently, how regularly I think that I'm in disagreement with somebody and actually we're agreeing. So please accept my apology, sir. I done fucked up. I done fucked up. You know how I can be. Mm. Well, see, I disagree here. I believe you're correct in spirit or in practice. De facto, you're right. JT says media shapes the rules, in my opinion. Um, in my view, if you're talking about the 24-hour news cycle, which is at this point is inseparable from the political system, as far as I can tell. And now we're really just talking about the nightmare dystopian beast system et al., right? ET space AL. We're really talking about the entirety of the thing. It seems to me like that is actually, when I've talked about recently, that virtually all individuals that comprise the masses in the realm, but certainly in America, are no longer processing data discretely for themselves individually and are in fact dependent upon the system or the media, however you want to refer to it, to package ideas and then to deliver the ideas to the individuals via some form of push notification, whether literal or figurative. So actually, we're saying the same thing. Just I'm very sensitive to the terminology because the terminology quickly becomes legalese, and the enemy will always seek the tiniest foothold to enter in via legalese and via subterfuge and via muddying of the waters. I've trained myself to react very viscerally to anything that seemingly falls short of that. So that's how I was able to be too sensitive, perhaps, and read the incorrect motive, but while remaining ever watchful for such attacks that can come at any time via anyone that I'm, communicating with. And by the way, I'm also capable of serving that part. This is the evil. This is part of what it is to be a human. In spite of how regularly I may now be identifying with my own true nature, I'm still capable of falling away from that long enough to then be used as a tool of the enemy in somebody else's life to spiritually attack them. Because I know who and what I am, right? I know who I am. I know what I am. And that cuts both ways some of the time. Or it can cut both ways more correctly. So temporary, I would assert, when called to the carpet in such a fashion as I was describing, I would assert, well, wait a minute. You can only refer to me, attacker, accuser. You're actually addressing me incorrectly. You're addressing me as if I'm going to be here permanently, eternally in this place, in this experience. My residency in this realm is temporary. What a blessing. It's all blessings. What a blessing. Hmm. Not permanent, existing only for a period or periods of time. Transient or ephemeral. Transient, and I live my life in such a way that I meet the legal definition of transient, by the way, much of the time, if not all of the time. Transient as an adjective meaning passing or disappearing with time. Transitory, from physics, Oh, it also means remaining for only a brief time. We're all transients in this realm, at least in this incarnation. Whereas if Satan is a thing, then Satan is actually stuck here, at least for the present, with no end in sight. By the way, maybe Satan's looking forward to the judgment. Say, let me get up out of here. Goodness gracious. Although presumably Satan would be feeding off the loose, so Satan would actually be like, I hope this lasts forever. Satan would be the one wanting to make it permanent, presumably. See, I hate Satan and evil so much, I have trouble even putting myself in a thought experiment and then representing the devil's advocate of the devil's advocate position, or advocating for the devil's advocate. If that makes sense. And I don't think it does, but whatever. We're having fun now. Decaying with time, especially exponentially. And they say that the older we get, it seems like time passes quicker. Fascinating that transient as an adjective in a context of physics means decaying with time, especially exponentially. That's fascinating. Hmm. And the noun is something that is transient. So accuse me of uh, of expressing my true nature and only doing it transitorily, and I'll say, well, wait a minute, I'm a transient. What do you mean? Of course, this is happening transitorily. Whatever do you mean? Uh, Synonym for transient: homeless, itinerant, migrant, or a traveler. I'm a homeless person in this realm. I'm an itinerant in this realm. I'm a traveler in this realm. I migrated to this realm. Legally, apparently. What legalese entrap me in this place? Under a soul trap. Under a soul trap scenario. What bargain or agreement or subterfuge or deception temporarily entrap me in this realm in this incarnation? Right. Meanwhile, love comes to town and says, "What does it matter? Don't you see what's in you, sir? Don't you see that I'm in you and I'm the most super intelligent force of love possible, and that God is love? And if the kingdom of God is within you, that means that nature of God is within you, meaning the highest levels of vibrational energy possible are within you, as well as the antithesis of those ideas." Later, JT. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate that, brother. Yeah, I'm just a little sensitive, man. I appreciate you putting up with the sensitivities. I'm working on it. I'll keep working on it. Later on, brother. Beck's in the house. I don't know if you caught the replay of yesterday, or maybe you were here. I can't remember, or maybe I couldn't see the comments. But yesterday's broadcast, the first stream yesterday, and then other than stumbling this morning with an attempt at utilizing the Adam and Eve Garden of Eden to make a point and falling flat on my face, and that's okay. But other than that, I think it's been very productive, high level spiritual discussion over here, or discourse more correctly, and discussion. And I would trust that Miss Bex would take what's of value to her and leave the rest, as would I, right? So we got that going for us individually. Individually, we got that going for us. And what a blessing, again, to address you fine folks in this forum. And I want to go back to my notes when the stream began. The title, Discovering the Superintelligence Within. And by way of proposition, I have several propositions to make a larger point. via if-then statements. If God is love. And I say if because who am I to say, right? Now, again, what I know and apprehend and experience within myself, that's completely separate. That is evidence. It's only evidence to me. And this is a key point that I believe few actually grasp. And the nature of the human and the nature of the human psychology would be, I've discovered a thing within me. I know a thing within me. I'm going to go talk to everybody else as if what I know within myself is 100% provably true outside of me. No, it's not. Now, it may be, but the process whereby it's provable externally that's a completely different animal than whatever processes may have occurred internally to have that direct experience. See? Two very different animals, two very different mechanisms. And as far as I can tell, it's not even possible. Now, can people be convinced to delude themselves for their own selfish purposes to accept, as many church-going Christians have, the 100% certainty of, spirituality exists exactly as the Bible describes, and you will never convince them otherwise. And in fact, they are 100% certain of it. Well, so what? Oh, there's a human being convinced of something? Well, by the way, danger, Will Robinson, I detect a great potential for calamity. What do they say? Pride goeth before a fall. Few things more prideful than being 100% certain of one's assertions, and not considering that there's a possibility of doubt. Now, within me, you can't do anything to unconvince me of what I've experienced. I'm only talking about the part where we have a discussion and assertions are made, out into the collective space, the shared space. So if God is love, and if love is defined as the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, and if the kingdom of that force, meaning God, now we're back to the Bible, or Leo Tolstoy, title of one of his books, and the kingdom of God is within you. So if one is willing to accept these proposals, if one is willing to accept the proposal that God is love, and if one is willing to go along with a specific definition of as love is the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, with its own characteristics, and if one is willing to accept the proposition that the kingdom of that force is within me or within you, and is willing to accept that my soul and perhaps your soul or essence, and I would refer to that as whatever represents you or whatever you are representing, by the way, or presenting perhaps, that energy if you're willing to accept that energy existed somewhere before this place and then came here and is now in a physical body, that would be what I mean by soul or essence. So if one is also further willing to accept that my essence and your essence individually in a seemingly individuated form is one with the most super intelligent force of love possible, thus creating what? A context. And we must necessarily speak within a context or context. So that's the if. Then, so if in the course of the discussion, I'm willing to accept all of these ifs, I then can use logic to say, then within me and perhaps within you exists the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level. Now, I would further posit that everything that is not, or more correctly, everything that is antithetical to the most super intelligent force of love possible at the highest level, that also, and that is not that, and is here and exists, is death, is destruction, is depravity, is decay, is rejection, is accusations, is evil, is fear, is anxiety, and negative states of being of all descriptions. How about you? How about you? So in aligning myself with the most super intelligent force of love possible, aka surrendering within myself to my own nature and essence. And they say no spiritual surrender. I say no spiritual victory without spiritual surrender. Surrender to what? Surrender to my own nature within myself. Meanwhile, the psychology of this realm has programmed your psychology and my psychology that anything achievable or worth achieving is only achievable via dominant, aggressive, assertive, masculine means. And I'm here to say that's poppycock. So what that would say is, well, surrender is not an option. You can't surrender, meaning working with the yin or the feminine or the passive or the submissive is not allowed. Only so the letting go of control over one's circumstances, right? By the way, how can one ever realize one's fate or destiny only through domination and control? Wouldn't the realization of one's own destiny, path in life, uh, fate, wouldn't that only occur by letting go of the human compulsion to try to control everything in one's own life? And then destiny and fate saying, nope, try as you might, spin your wheels. I'm destiny, I'm fate. That's not going to work. Keep trying, though, little silly little human. Keep trying. And in fact, I talk about cheer the level up. And one of my intermediate levels up was realizing, accepting that I had made as much progress within myself as I could possibly make through the assertive and the domination, through the dominating of myself, through the controlling of myself, right? Through making myself assertively do things. And that now that what that means is if I've reached the limit of the yang within myself, but I must, if my path is progress, and in order to fulfill my purpose, I must continue to progress. Well, I must now embrace the submissive. I must now within me. I must now work with the yin within me. I must now work with the feminine within me, whether I want to or not. See, because now we're back to the solipsism. Nothing is more important in this place, from my perspective, than my walk and my path and my attainment. And which, let's be clear, to serve alongside the most super intelligent force of love possible by submitting to my own nature within myself, a spiritual surrender within myself, to thusly my creative force, which never lies dormant. And each new moment, I'm bringing something into existence that either serves the highest form or serves the lowest form. There's nothing in between, right? And why should wickedness carry the day? Why should evil win? And I don't control the part where wickedness may very well carry the day outside of my own being. I don't control the part. See, I have no control of that. Again, this is a feminine. This is a submission. This is a surrender to accepting the reality that I have no control over what the government does. I have no control over the economic situations I experience. Now I have an ability to influence them in various directions, such as I've made choices that have led to I now have the money to renew my cell service for another year, unless somebody stole my identity and drained my account. See what I mean? I don't have control entirely. I have an ability to make decisions and steer things in a direction. It ain't up to me. what the government does. It ain't up to me what the economy does. It ain't up to me what the stock market does. Right? It ain't up to me how many miles I get paid for this week. Because when they send me to pick the load up and I'm there for 2 hours, as happened yesterday, and I roll out and usually I would just stay on route and I would stop at the first weigh station on the route. But my intuition says, you know what? You better weigh this bad boy because there's a weigh station up ahead and you better go out a route 5 miles and you better go to this Love's. But it's a pain in the ass, very busy, very tight. It's not desirable to go to this particular truck stop in the city limits of Memphis. And it's not dangerous necessarily, not in the daytime, not any more dangerous than anywhere else. It's not scary because I'm from a place that's very similar to Memphis culturally. I love Memphis. I love the people of Memphis. Uh, Great people, wonderful people, some of the best folks you'll ever meet, and I mean that. Mm. And the weight's it's overweight on the drive axles. So now this is illegal. I can't pull this load. So now we have to go back to the shipper. And now there's a big old line I get back to the shipper about 10:20. So now my appointment was at 7. I left closer to 9, probably left about 9:15. It took so long to get in there and scale and then even be able to drive away. By the time I get back to the shipper, it's like 10:20. And they're closed for lunch for an hour. So now by the time 11 a.m. comes, they're slam busy, and it's a fucking hour to get through the line to tell the lady, hey, it's called a rework. Which means y'all got to put my trailer back in the door. You got to give me another dock door. I got to put this trailer in the door. Y'all got to pull most of this product, if not all this product off. And then you got to load it again to where I can legally haul this freight. See? So I don't control the part where I don't leave there until many hours later, thus limiting the amount of miles I get to drive that day, thus limiting the amount of miles I get paid for this week. So I don't have control over that. Now, what I do have as a human is I have the ability to fall away from identifying with my own true nature and to then begin to identify with the circumstances in which I found myself, what is the result of that? Well, the result of that is death and destruction, because to align oneself, to identify with the circumstances and the ins and the outs of the unfolding of this realm is to identify oneself with the realm itself and the nature of the realm itself, which is death, destruction, depravity, depression, decadence, degeneration, right? And on and on and on and on and on, right? What will that cause within me? That will cause feelings of stress, fear, anxiety, and on and on and on and on and on. Thus, if loosh is a thing, and if there's entities feeding off of the negativity, what are they feeding off of? They're feeding off of not love, they're feeding off of the antithesis of love. See? The antithesis of love. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all for joining me on this high-level spiritual discussion. If only I could just, and I know I can, but I'm not going to, but if only that the Adam and Eve Garden of Eden, if only I hadn't fallen up flat on my face with that, it would have been an A+ effort in my eyes. But, I'm going to give it a B. I'm going to give it a solid B, right? Meaning we could make a transcript out of this and, print out the transcript, put it into a Word document, give me 10 minutes and I'll edit it well enough. And then we'll give it to the university professor and I'll get a B on the paper. Thanks for watching. Bye.